For the last 5.5 decades, the Nissan Z has been an important heritage-rich model within Nissan's North American lineup. In fact, within the enthusiast world, the Z has a ton of respect, so you better believe that when Nissan finally gave us an all-new version of the Z last year, a lot of enthusiasts really smiled, because this is a car that we've been waiting for a long time, and unlike Toyota with the Supra, this vehicle was all Nissan. However, when I first had a chance to drive it, I thought it was a little bit too soft to be a full-on sports car. However, for 2024, Nissan is looking to rectify that with the reintroduction of this model. This is the 2024 Nissan Z Nismo, tuned of course by Nissan's performance division. This car has more power under the hood, and it also has an upgraded suspension, brakes, and tires to make this vehicle track capable right out of the box. So as you can see this week, Nissan has loaned us this black diamond pearl Z Nismo, and the big question I would answer for those of you who are looking for the ultimate track ready Z, was the longer wait for the Nismo version worth it? Stay tuned to find out. So before we start talking about the upgraded styling that Nissan has made to the Nismo version, this is of course a high performance variant, so I thought I'd pop the hood and show you guys what's powering this thing. Now, just like the regular Z, this car uses a prop rod to hold up the hood. I was kind of hoping Nissan would go with a strut, but the hood itself is actually on the lighter side, which I really appreciate. And just like the standard Z, you have essentially a massaged version of the company's corporate 3-liter twin turbocharged direct injection V6. It's known internally as the VR30 DDT. And Nissan says for the Nismo version, they've made upgrades to the internals with upgraded cooling, an upgraded oil cooler. It also has a revised wastegate that allows for more boost pressure and higher turbine speeds for its twin turbochargers. And the result is up to 420 horsepower and 384 pound-feet of torque. That's about 20 more horsepower and 34 more foot-pounds of torque compared to the standard Z Performance. And unlike the regular Z, sadly, a manual transmission is not available here. Nissan instead equips it with the 9-speed automatic transmission that's kind of sourced from Mercedes-Benz. Nismo, however, has tuned the transmission. They've upgraded the internals so it can handle more power, and it has quicker shifts and a better launch control system compared to the standard Z. Now, Nissan says fuel economy for this engine is rated at 17 in the city, 24 on the highway. It's a little bit less versus the regular Z. The company didn't quote a 0 to 60 time. We got just under 4 seconds in our last testing, so we'll try it again when we get out on the road. It has a top speed of around 155 miles an hour, and this engine should have a little bit more than 15 PSI of boost. I couldn't actually find the exact boost pressure, but we do know that the standard Z has around 15 pounds of max boost pressure. I'd probably say this is closer to around 17 pounds, but I'm kind of estimating there. As this car sits, it weighs in at just under 3,700 pounds, so compared to the regular Z, sadly, the Nismo version is about 100 pounds heavier. But let's go ahead and close up this hood here and take a look at the rest of the exterior styling. Now, first of all, this particular color is called Black Diamond Pearl. I'm typically not a fan of black cars, especially since they don't show well on camera and in photos, but I have to say, in the sunlight and when the car is nice and clean, dark color cars look fantastic. I love the styling language here, of course, when the Z first came out. You have a slightly different front fascia with a more aggressive front splitter. It also has the unique red trim along the front fascia. You have the Nissan badging here. You have larger openings, of course, for the front grille that allows for more air to pass through. And Nissan says it kind of has some heritage design called the G-nose from like the Z cars from the 1970s and 1980s. So I kind of see that in the front fascia. It kind of flows nicely with the new Nissan logo. You can see the headlights. It has those half-moon shape LED daytime running lights, LED turn signals, LED low and high beams. And as you can see, no actual LED fog lights. You do have some front parking sensors, no front camera or 360 camera. You don't really need it on a sports car like this, but I have to say, this car has been out for a couple years, but it still turns a lot of heads. I think Nissan really nailed the design language of this car, and I think it actually looks better versus the Toyota Supra. I also love the way the hood looks here with this kind of like power bulge that you get. You can see the sun is now shining. You can really see the metallic fleck in the black diamond paint. This is actually a free color. Nissan will offer the Nismo version in 5 colors, including a stealth gray, which is a Nismo specific exterior color. Now, in terms of the width of the vehicle, Nissan actually made this car about an inch wider versus the standard Z. It's also about an inch longer in the overall length, but still at a wheelbase of 100.4 inches long, it's around 4 inches longer than the GR Supra, and its overall length is around 173.2. So this is still a pretty small vehicle. I mean, another rival would be the new Ford Mustang, which is easily a foot longer than the Z. So this is still kind of like a very compact sports car. It's obviously bigger than a Miata or GR86. for example, but it's not so huge like a Ford Mustang. Now you can see the wheels. This is another area where Nissan seriously upgraded the wheels for the Nismo version. These are a 19-inch Ray forged alloy wheel with this beautiful gloss black design. They're actually a half an inch wider versus the standard Z, so it's a 19 by 10 here, a 19 by 10 and a half in the rear. You also have these upgraded brakes. These are a 15-inch rotor clamped down by Akebono 4-piston calipers, which are painted in red. You also have high friction brake pads, and Nissan says these wheels are a little bit lighter versus the standard Z. You have a 255 by 40 R19 in the front with a 285 in the rear, so they're 10 millimeters fatter. You also have Nismo tuning on the suspension, so it's stiffer. The chassis also is a little bit stiffer, and it really is going to give this car more of that sports car feel when you're out on a track. Now, looking at the side sill, you can see there's that red trim that kind of continues along the lower end. It also continues on the window or on the door mirror here. You can see these are also, they have an integrated turn signal, but no power fold feature. You can see no sunroof on the Nismo version. Nissan Zs don't offer a sunroof, and there's no convertible version in sight. You can see over in this area, this has a lot of heritage design cues. And then at the rear of the car, this is where Nissan took a lot of cues from the 1990s 300ZX, which I really love that generation of Z, especially the twin turbo models. I love the way the taillights look. You have a more aggressive rear spoiler back here with a 3-piece design that gives it, again, more of a sportier edge, which is definitely a nice touch. You can see the taillights have a really cool design touch with their full LEDs, LED turn signal, LED reverse light, LED backup lights. There's the subtle Z badge here. And then the Nismo badge here, I'm not really a fan of this. I think it's kind of, it looks a little tacked on, but it does have these nicely integrated parking sensors. The rear diffuser is also a lot more aggressive. And then you can see the twin outlet exhaust. The Nismo team did tune the exhaust specifically. So let's go ahead and fire it up. You can hear how it sounds real quick. So obviously it's not quite as loud or as sonorous as the inline 6 from the Supra, but I have to admit, it does sound a lot better versus the regular Z. So bravo to the Nismo team for giving this thing a lot better vocals from the standard Z. Now in terms of the cargo area, you push underneath the Nissan logo there. That's what allows you access to open up the hatch. And Nissan says you get around 6.9 cubic feet of space. Now 6.9 is actually around 3 cubic feet less versus what you get in the Supra. However, this opening is much larger versus the Supra, but I think the Supra's cargo area is actually a little bit deeper. This is a little bit shallow. It does provide, again, some decent amount of space underneath here. If you want to look underneath the floor here, you can see there is, it looks like, a little bit, you get a fix-a-flat kit, an inflator, and you have like your subwoofer down here, but not much in terms of storage. You can also see there's the additional bracing there to increase the stiffness of the chassis. Overall, Nissan says the torsional rigidity is up 2.5%, which is pretty negligible. But again, if you wanted to use this vehicle to go to your Costco or do some grocery runs, the Z Nismo can certainly accommodate that. Moving on to the interior of the Nissan Z Nismo. First of all, this sports car has roughly 4.9 inches of ground clearance. So getting into this vehicle requires you to basically fall in. When I was younger, this was a little bit easier, but as you get in and shut the door, you can hear the door. I don't love the way the door slam sounds. It's a little bit tinny sounding for me, but again, that's something that technically a manufacturer can kind of tune to adjust. Now you can see here's the key fob for the Z Nismo. This is Nissan's older intelligent access key. I actually do like the size of it, but I kind of wish they gave it their newest fob. You can see 3 simple buttons: unlock, lock, and panic function. There's not even a remote trunk release from the key fob itself, but all Zs essentially come with their push button start. You can see with the Nismo version, you do get this unique red anodized trim for the start stop and for the drive mode selector. So push that button. You can hear the engine starts up with the same kind of growly burble that you hear from the standard Z. And then there's not really an active exhaust per se, but when you put it into Sport Plus, you can see it has those nice little pops and crackles, which you can also hear a lot when you're driving the car. That's something the regular Z didn't have. So I appreciate, the fact that the Nismo team tuned the exhaust to be a little bit more burbly. Now, the first thing you're going to notice, obviously, when you get inside are the seats. You can see the Nismo comes with these Recaro bucket style seats, which the seats themselves have perforations, and they kind of are covered in a leather and Alcantara material. I love also how much thicker the bolstering extension is. It really holds you in place nicely, but sadly, you don't get power seats, which typically with a Recaro seat you don't, and Nissan also deletes the heated seat function. I kind of wish they had kept the heated seats because you can see there are these 2 blank buttons here where the heated seats would go. Keep in mind, a Z Performance will have heated seats with kind of like a half power, half manual adjustment. If you want to adjust the Recaro seats, you can kind of adjust the driver's seat here for height in terms of the thigh extension and for the actual bottom cushion. And you can also find this rotating wheel to adjust the recline of the seats. However, if you're over 6 feet tall, my videographer Martin behind the camera is 6'1". He doesn't fit in this car very well because of just how narrow and how low the roof is. So try this car out for yourself. If you're over 6 feet tall, you might find it to be a little constricting. You can see the steering wheel is also unique on the Nismo version. It has a combination of an Alcantara and the leather with the red contrast stitching. It also has the 12 o'clock red racing line position here. The steering wheel itself has a manual tilt and telescoping adjustment, but you can see the level of range here that allows you to adjust isn't much. So it takes a little bit of time and tinkering to get a comfortable driving position. I also like the paddles, which are plastic, but I have to admit, they kind of look more like metal, so that's kind of a nice touch. I do wish the steering wheel rim was also a little fatter. It just feels a little bit too skinny, especially for a performance version. You have some buttons here to control your audio, to control the cruise control. There's no adaptive cruise control in this car. Nissan doesn't offer that. That's something you can get, for example, on the Supra. The horn, it sounds appropriate given the size of the car. At least it doesn't sound puny, because if you guys remember, the Toyota Supra has a pathetic sounding horn that belongs in a Corolla, not in a Supra. So I appreciate what Nissan has done here. In terms of the door panel materials, you do have a soft touch injection molded plastic. This door handle literally looks like it was lifted from a 370Z. You have power window controls, one touch for both the front windows. You have power mirror controls, door lock controls. No memory seats, obviously, because it's manual seats, but in terms of materials, they feel relatively solid. When you move over to the dash, you can see you have a soft touch upper portion here. I like how there's actual leather stitching, real stitching along this lower portion of the dash. On this portion here of the instrument panel hood, it is kind of like a cheaper plastic. And then these 3 analog dials are for your boost, turbo speed, and your battery voltage. It looks like it was essentially lifted out of the last generation Z, which is fine. I like that, that kind of heritage look to it. And then all Nismo versions will essentially come with the 12.3-inch digital cluster, where you can adjust the way the gauge display looks if you'd like. You can kind of go into the settings here. You can change the meter view. That's the sport view. Here's the normal view, which is kind of similar to what every other Nissan has. And then there's also the enhanced view that allows you to put it into where you have a bigger area to show like driver information, show audio information. That's definitely probably more suitable in a Rogue versus a Nissan Z, a sports car. So I personally like to leave it in the sport view, where it gives you that big tack front and center, and then you have your gauges that you really need to see for various engine vitals, of course. In the center here, you have a 9-inch touchscreen, which includes wireless Apple CarPlay and Android, or not Android Auto, however. The CarPlay is wireless. The Android Auto is via a wired connection, which I don't really love. There are traditional dials here for your volume and tuning, actual buttons here for accessing the audio controls. And if I put the vehicle into reverse, you can see the backup camera resolution is absolute crap. I really was hoping Nissan would upgrade that. You can see it does have trajectory and parking sensors and rear cross traffic alert, but not cross traffic braking. And that's literally one of the worst resolutions I've seen in a long time, especially for a modern car. You have a single zone automatic climate control with these dials, 3 dials here, which look like they were lifted off of an Infiniti from 10-15 years ago. No wireless phone charging pad, but my iPhone 14 Pro Max does fit here. You have 2 USB charging ports. This shifter here literally looks like it belongs in a Rogue or a Sentra or something. It's an electronic shifter. There's a little trigger here. You push the trigger to go to reverse, push it up to go to reverse, kick it back to go to drive. There's also a manual mode, and then you push the P button to go to park. So this is where I think Nissan should have gone with a more traditional shifter for the Z, considering this is a sports car. Again, there's no manual on this vehicle. You have a traditional pull-style handbrake, which is kind of a nice touch if you guys want to do some drifting in this car, which Nissan kind of knows their audience for this vehicle. Over here, you can see there's a padded center console. If you push this button, that opens up. You can see it's pretty narrow or shallow in there. There's not really much in terms of space. If you're looking for a power outlet, it's actually down there, buried underneath the dash for a traditional 12-volt power outlet. You also have glove compartment here, which is a not damped but not lined with felt. It's a bin style. You have an auto-dimming rear view mirror. You can see there's not even LED lighting in the map lights here. For me, the headroom is good, and then obviously back behind me, there is no back seats. It's only a 2-seater, but there is a nice little shelf or storage area where my camera equipment all pretty much fits there. So overall, the interior has some minor changes versus the regular Z, but I really think that Nissan should have at least included heated seats, a heated steering wheel, and power seats, for example, because I think at this price point, those are features that this car should have really had. All right, so here we are back driving the 2024 Nissan Z Nismo. It's been about 8 months since I had a chance to drive this thing out on the first drive in Northern California. Remember, the standard Z left me a little bit disappointed because of just how softly tuned it was. The Nismo version, however, essentially takes all of my gripes with the regular Z performance and kind of just addresses a lot of those faults, because remember, we have a revised suspension, revised steering, upgraded brakes, larger wheels and tires, stickier tires, and just more attractive styling, and in addition to additional power underneath the hood. So now we've got the massaged version of the 3-liter twin-turbo V6. It's now making 420 horsepower, 384 foot-pounds of torque. That power figure is definitely going to put it up on the higher end of the scale. This has more horsepower than the Toyota GR Supra, but less horsepower than the Ford Mustang Dark Horse. Remember, that vehicle has a 5-liter V8. Now, it only comes with a Nismo-tuned version of the 9-speed auto. And Nissan doesn't claim a 0 to 60, but let's go ahead and see what we can get when we strap up our equipment and test it out on our usual stretch of road. This car does have launch control. It's in sport. To engage launch control, you pull both paddles. Wow. 0 to 60 in 4.06 seconds. So that is a smidge slower versus what I got back in Northern California. I got 3.9, but you guys hear the back end of this car definitely likes to dance a little bit. But the cool thing about this car is those sticky Dunlop SP Sport Max tires. They're pretty comparable to like a Michelin Pilot Sport 4S tire, and they do their best to cling on for dear life as the 384 foot-pounds of torque just struggles to basically put the power down. This Nismo tuned 9-speed auto also does a really good job of just shifting a lot faster, banging off shifts. It's no wonder Nissan decided to go with this transmission, because it is definitely just the quicker option. It's going to give you the quicker lap times. Let's just try it here one more time again. We'll brake torque it. Launch control ready. 4.10 or 4.1 seconds there. That's with it more going slightly uphill. We'll see if we can try it one more time up ahead, because that time it actually stuck a little bit better. I think the tires are starting to get a little temperature in them. I love how this car accelerates. I also love the sound from that V6. Nissan has tuned, or Nismo has tuned the exhaust, and it makes the nice little crackles and pops from the exhaust, and you can even take control of the automatic via these paddles. And you can hear nice pops and crackles. I mean, it's not quite as sonorous sounding as the inline 6 turbo that's in the Supra, but still, this is, oh, I love the pops. And the shifts are also quick. There's also like a slight little burp or burble when you do shift gears, almost like it has like an overboost as soon as you shift the gears, and you feel that nice shove. It's a very mechanical feel to it. It just feels like a properly tuned automatic. Now, it's not quite like dual clutch levels, but I have to say it's pretty darn close. And remember, this is a torque converter automatic that Nissan has essentially borrowed from Mercedes. It shares some parts and characteristics, of course, with the 9-speed autos you'll find in a lot of Mercedes products. It has been Nismo tuned to handle the additional power, to shift quicker. And when you have it in its Sport Plus setting, like I've had it now, it just does a really good job of just being right on boil, of downshifting out of its top gears to give you that extra power, shifting really fast. The ride quality in this car also is surprisingly good. I've been driving this car for almost a week. Oh, listen to those pops and crackles. And I actually am really shocked at how compliant the ride quality is out on the real world. Yet the stiffness of this chassis, I mean, the additional bracing, the stiffer tuned suspension, the bigger brakes, I mean, this car now feels like a proper track car versus where the original Z Performance, or the Z Performance when it first came out, felt a little too sloppy, a little bit too soft. So I love the fact that Nismo has just addressed that big complaint that I had. It feels like a proper sports car now. I think that's important when you plan to take this thing out on a track. But let's just try it here again one more time. I want to see if we can get a slightly quicker time. Launch control. Yeah, this part of the road's a little more gravelly, so if there's another opportunity, I might take it, but that might be the best time we can do. Again, this car, you know, even though we've got those sticky tires, the limited slip differential, it's still a rear-wheel drive car, and if you want the best 0 to 60 times, you have to, do it on a prepped surface. You need to have some temperature in the tires, but still, for a car that has 420 horsepower, this thing surprisingly puts its power down well. It's pretty similar to the way the Supra puts its power down. Oh, God, I love the feel of the shifts and the sound of the engine. It's so visceral. I love the new Z. Like, I did not feel the same kind of love when I first drove the Z Performance. And then when I drove the Nismo, I was like, oh yeah, this is better. But now after I've spent a week with this car, I like it. I like it a lot. But let's go ahead and switch the drive mode here to its standard setting. There's no comfort or eco, thank God. But the Sport Plus was new. And as you guys saw, it's still comfortable enough to daily drive. The steering in this car is quick and precise. The suspension has very little to no body lean, which I love. It is a relatively noisy interior, though. You're going to hear the road noise from the tires when you're out on the highway speeds, but that's kind of the case with a lot of sports cars. These seats, these Recaro seats also are plush. They are well padded, yet they hold you in place nicely. They also look fantastic. I just wish that Nissan would have thrown in some power seats, or at least heated seats, for Christ's sakes. I mean, the fact that this car doesn't have heated seats is kind of insulting to me, because you get that in like a Mustang Dark Horse, or you get that in a Toyota Supra. The Z Nismo, for some reason, doesn't have that feature, even though it should. I don't know why it doesn't. But still, like, it is relatively comfortable to drive. You can also see out of the car really easily. I can see out of the front, the side. The rear visibility isn't wonderful. I would love to see Nissan put a digital camera rearview mirror, but again, you can't really expect to get everything. This is still supposed to be like a track-focused sports car. At least that's what it's, that's why it's Nismo tuned and whatnot. But I am genuinely shocked at how easy it is to daily drive this car. I mean, yes, you do sit low. I did notice the front splitter on this car will scrape on my driveway unless I backed it in or I did it kind of at an angle. So kind of keep that in mind. Some competitors aren't quite as low as this car, but hey, it's a sports car. You kind of expect it to be a little bit lower than, your average, regular car. So I just found out that if you don't have it in Sport Plus or Sport, it's not going to engage the launch control. So that's something to keep in mind. I just want to see if I could try to do another 0 to 60 at some point. But overall, just daily driving this car, I am genuinely surprised. It's still fun as heck when you find your favorite back road. And in terms of the fuel efficiency, I averaged around 20 mpg in mostly city driving. On the highway, I was able to beat the numbers and get like 28 mpg. So that's actually pretty good, because remember, this car is rated at 17 at 24, but it's nice to see that this car does better than those numbers. And then when you put it in Sport Plus, it just has that lovely sonorous sounds. I just really impressed with the overall package that you get with the Nismo version. So after spending the full week with the hottest version of the Nissan Z, I have to say, when I first had a chance to drive this all-new Nissan Z, I fell in love with the retro modern design language. I also love the twin-turbo V6, but what I didn't love was the chassis. The car itself just felt a little too soft, a little too sloppy, especially for a sports car. And that was kind of the problem, is when you drove like a GR Supra, it just felt a lot more like a serious sports car. So obviously for the Nismo version, Nissan's performance division has rectified all that. The Nismo tuned suspension, the upgraded wheels and tires, the additional power under the hood have resulted in a Z that finally feels like a proper track car right out of the box. In fact, this is how I personally think the Z should have launched when it first came out almost 2 years ago. As you guys saw, 0 to 60 times just over 4 seconds is still very impressive. It's about the same time as what I got in the last GR Supra with the automatic that I drove. If you guys also remember, a manual version of this car takes around a half a second to a full second longer. It really depends on how well you shift, how easily the tires are going to hook up, because remember, even though these are fat 285 wide tires, this is still a rear-wheel drive car, and there are times where the rear end likes to dance a little bit, but it's also a lot more manageable versus something like a Dodge Challenger with a V8, for example. It puts the power down surprisingly well. Ride quality also shocked me, because I was expecting this car to just be back-breaking in terms of ride quality on the highway, but it actually wasn't too bad. I mean, if you're driving this thing around the city on those crappy, roads with lots of potholes, I wouldn't recommend it. It still feels very stiff, but on a smooth highway surface, it did pretty well. Also, in terms of fuel economy, I was surprised to get nearly 30 miles to the gallon in my actual testing, which is an excellent number. It's pretty much on par with a GR Supra. The BMW Straight 6 can also do over 30 mpg if you really try to drive it super efficiently. Really, where the Z Nismo kind of gets a little bit awkward for me is when you look at the pricing, because you can get into a base Z Sport for around $43,000 with a manual transmission. Of course, that's the base version. If you guys want the performance version of the Z, it'll cost you around $53,000. It's kind of a worthy upgrade, because you get upgraded brakes, upgraded tires, limited slip differential, and additional features on the inside. The Nismo version, however, is a whopping $13,000 more than the Z Performance. So when you factor in, the additional goodies this car gives you, base pricing for the Z Nismo starts at around $65,900 with small options and destination, like my test car here. the grand total price comes to just under $67,000, around $66,900, which again, almost 67 grand for this car is expensive, because if you look at a GR Supra, you can get one to a 3-liter premium inline 6 for around 62. The 45th anniversary version of the Supra is around 65. A Mustang Dark Horse, so that's the pinnacle of the Mustang line, with the V8 starts at around 58,000, around 62 if you want the premium package. However, with the Ford, you have to add the Dark Horse track package for it to be comparable to this. And at that point, the Mustang can get to around 70 to 75 grand. So there is a little bit of value in this car, but really what you're getting with the Z Nismo is also exclusivity, because Nissan wouldn't tell us how many they're going to build, but they did say that this car will be a limited production model. So it could be something that should hold its value over time, especially, you know, if you guys don't plan to drive it or track it very hard. But again, if you're looking for the ultimate Z with this beautiful retro design language that's basically track capable out of the box, the Z Nismo could be worth a look, but just remember its price tag is on the higher end. So really you have to want this car and also want the exclusivity factor to choose it over a lot of its rivals. Well, all that said, hope you guys have enjoyed my full overview on the brand new 2024 Nissan Z Nismo. If you're also looking to see the latest cars I'm testing, be sure to follow me on Instagram at Redline_reviews, like us on Facebook, and as always guys, please keep subscribing to the Redline Reviews YouTube channel for all the latest reviews. Thank you so much for watching. I'll catch you all in the next video.